Welcome to Beers with Rich. I'm Rich, editor of Under the Radar Report. As you know, we're about to put our foot on the gas when it comes to reporting season. So I thought, why not drink an Imperial Stout? I mean, that's what you think, of course. So here's Onward, Ever Onward, Imperial Stout by our own local brewery, White Bay. Let's crack it. It's a big one. White Bay, working classy. Well, it's stout. It's stout. It's stout. Stout is good. Oh boy. Jeez. It's a big one. Can keep you going all night. Gas is the theme. And the RBA definitely played up to that theme with another interest rate rise this week. Well, central banks around the world raising rates, and the markets, reacting this way and that. What to make of it all? What do you do? Find out here at Under the Radar. Boy, it's pretty good. Certainly. The first point to make is we're in a very stock-specific market. So relying on the market uplift, well, that's yesterday, yesteryear. You can't rely on that anymore. There are big opportunities to make money. That's what we've shown you over the weeks, but it's very stock-specific. You got to be careful when you press the button. So, what does confusion in markets mean? It means that there are valid reasons to buy and there are valid reasons to sell. But we do know one fact, and that is inflation's hitting record levels. And part of the reason for that is record high gas prices. I mean, they're going to hurt when it comes to winter in Europe, and it all comes back to those Russian tanks. So on the macro front, there are like infinite variables, infinite. But in the world of stocks, sometimes you can actually surf a trend. So I know you can't surf the market, but sometimes you can surf certain commodities. And that's when looking at mining stocks can really pay off, because they're cyclical beasts. And sometimes, you hit a cyclical beast at the right time, you can make really good returns. Look at Fortescue. I mean, we jumped off the back of that. The second half of last year made 60%. I mean, if you're a gas producer and there's a supply disruption, as we've seen, if you can maintain your volume, you're going to make money. I mean, that's, certainty almost, as close as certain as it gets. So that's why we've been covering the oil and gas sector in the past few weeks. And we've come up with some really good ideas and stocks. Certainly one of those in the past has been Talon Energy. We revisit that one. So the stock's actually producing, has some projects in Brazil. What we like about it is that it's small, so it can adapt quickly. Doesn't have as big capex requirements. Like Santos has some great projects, but they're diluted by a lot of marginal projects. These ones are higher risk, but really if you do your homework, you can make a lot bigger returns, especially when you've got that double whammy of production growth and, price growth. So right now we're looking at, we covered Talon again. We took profits and now it's come back. So read all about it in this week's report. So, and that's what a lot about small caps is entrepreneurial, and that's what impresses us about the ones, in this sector, because, they're real disruptors. Speaking of which, let's look at the gas sector. I mean, there has been a phenomenon of, liquefying natural gas into LNG, and also coinciding with record rates of CSG production. So basically that's meant that gas has gone from being a domestic commodity shoved around by, pipes, to being an international commodity, where it's really driven by that price disruption at the top end of town. in Europe and with those big markets being disrupted. So what we're seeing is small caps stepping into the breach, because all these big companies, they're all liquefying it. They're focused on supplying that higher margin market overseas, those international gas prices with the LNG. Meanwhile, there's a gap that's opened up both on the east and west coasts of Australia through that emerging supply gap. So you've got increasing demand. Let's look at the west coast. You've got increasing industrialization over there, plus, or industry, ramping up production. Plus, you've got renewables requiring more and more energy, which is somewhat ironic. But basically, you've got a gap there on the west coast that was partly exploited by Beach Energy, which put its foot on one of the big discoveries onshore of all time in the Perth Basin. But again, what's it doing with that discovery? It's liquefying it. It's sending a lot of it to Japan, because it's doing a joint venture with a Japanese company, whose name escapes me. That's in Waitsia. But you've got small caps stepping into the breach to create, to develop wells just adjacent to that. And you've got Warrego Energy, Talon Energy, Strike Energy, all developing close to the Erregulla site in the Perth Basin. So that's nearby to Waitsia. Talon, so both Strike and Warrego are doing a JV in Erregulla, and Talon's doing a joint venture with Strike in another project. So they're combining financial and operational resources. And that's what these companies can do to achieve that kind of economies of scale, which is so important. And we cover those, certainly we cover Strike Energy, but we cover it in a lot of depth to give you some understanding of how they're progressing. On the East Coast, long-time watchers of subscribers will know, we've been in and out of Cooper Energy, which has been somewhat beset by problems with the Orbost gas plant, which basically processes gas from its Sol project in the Gippsland Basin, and that's been beset by problems operated by APA. Well, Cooper's taking over those problems, and I think we've seen the back of the vast majority of them, because it's had a big equity raising. So that often provides an opportunity for investors, and we discussed that in this issue. Basically, what you're looking at is a situation where you're looking at a situation of disruption, and that disruption is because the big guys have left the field fallow, the domestic field fallow for the small guys, and that is a classic niche for a small cap. So I really encourage you to read this week's Under the Radar report, and 2 issues ago we covered this was the first part of our oil and gas report. What's coming up? Well, small caps. That's inundated with small caps, big caps, any caps. We've got reporting season coming up. That's what we've got coming up. We've got more immediately, we've got a fertilizer stock report. So there's going to be lots of stocks that you might not have heard of there. And, we've got record fertilizers. Once again, it comes back to tanks rolling down the Russian tanks. It always seems to come back to that. But next week we cover the a stock report on fertilizers. We also cover our best buys with the reporting season around the corner. So there's lots to look forward to, lots of buying opportunities. So here's to Under the Radar, and